Jonathan, let me know.
Mr. Speaker, it says we're live.
Okay.
Mr. Speaker, we're live now.
Thank you very much. The House will please come to order. Welcome to Thursday, January 28th. We appreciate all of you being here today. We appreciate all those folks yesterday who participated in our activities. 600, 700 folks participated in our session yesterday on the House. So well done yesterday with our work. I want to shout out a little special thing to a young craftsman in the state of Wyoming who provided me with a new gavel as speaker, to Malachi Haroldson, son of Representative Haroldson, and we have a new Thor gavel in the chamber. So thank you, Malachi. With that, Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Convening roll call for the third day, Thursday, January 28th, 2021. Andrew.
Here.
Baker.
Here.
Banks.
Here.
Bear.
Here.
Blackburn.
Here.
Brown.
Here.
Burkhart.
Here.
Burt.
Present.
Clausen.
Representative Clausen,
Here.
key your mic. Thank you.
Clifford.
Here.
Connolly.
Here.
Crago.
Present.
Duncan.
Here.
Eklund.
He's just sitting down. We'll come back to him.
Air.
Here.
Whitner.
Here.
Fortner.
Here.
Gray.
Here.
Greer.
Here.
Hallinan.
Here.
Haroldson.
Here.
Harshman.
Here.
Heiner.
Here.
Henderson.
Here.
Hunt.
Here.
Jennings.
Here.
Kenner.
Here.
Knapp.
Here.
Larson Lloyd.
Here.
Larson Dan.
Here.
McGuire.
Present.
Martinez.
Still working on a little technology. Please continue, Chief Clerk.
Nyman.
Here.
Newsom.
Here.
Nicholas.
Here and present.
Oakley.
Here.
Obermuller.
Here.
O'Hearn.
Here.
Olson.
Here.
Ottman.
Here.
Paxton.
Here.
Provenza. Roscoe.
Here.
Forts.
Here.
Sherwood.
Here.
Simpson.
Here.
Summers.
Here.
Stiff.
Here.
Stivar.
Present.
Sweeney.
Here.
Walters.
Here.
Washit.
Here.
Western.
Here.
Worf. Worf. Williams.
Present.
Wilson.
Here.
Winter.
Here in the chamber.
Yin.
Here.
Swanitzer.
Here.
Mr. Speaker.
Here.
Eklund.
Here.
Martinez.
Present.
Worf.
Excused.
Excused. We have 59 present, 1 excused.
Thank you, Chief Clerk. Members, if you'd please join me for our prayer of the day. Representative Kenner.
Let us pray together. Our Father in heaven, as we gather to serve the people of Wyoming, we are reminded of our many blessings for which we are thankful. We are also thankful for the LSO, the session staff, and our families and friends who support us in our service. We ask for your mercy and grace for those suffering in any way, whether sickness, the loss of a loved one, or those affected in any other way by this virus. We also remember those who have no one to pray for them. As we discuss and debate the issues before us, we ask for wisdom, insight, and understanding to help us make the right decisions. From the book of James, help us to be swift to hear, slow to speak, and slow to anger. Father, please continue to bless our state of Wyoming and the United States of America. In your holy name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So members, just a quick privilege. Yesterday, I expressed appreciation for our troops, those serving, those who have served. Today, I'd like to express our gratitude on behalf of the House of Representatives for healthcare providers throughout our state, whether they be those taking doctors in hospitals, nurses, folks taking care of our elderly in their homes, nursing homes, etc. Just lifting them up as the work they do. Also, it's not often we get people here in this session, but we have. Just want to shout out to Mrs. Jennings. Representative Jennings' wife is here in the chamber, so we're thankful that family members are here to support their loved ones. So, yeah, you're welcome to stand up and clap. So I think that it's hard for everybody to see the same things and hear the same things, but members in the chamber stood up and clapped. And I think on the screen, I think this is the ASL, American Sign Language, for clapping. So folks who want to do that, that's fine too, or clap. So anyway, so thank you very much. Chief Clerk, Journal Committee report.
Mr. Speaker, your Journal Committee reports that the Journal of January 27th, 2021 has been read and recommend that it be approved. Representative Harrelson and Representative Provenza.
Thank you very much. Messages from the Senate.
Mr. Speaker, the House adopted the Committee of the Whole report, failing the bills listed below by the vote indicated. Senate File Number 12, Selective Service Registration. 8 ayes, 20 noes, 1 excused, 1 absent. Sincerely, Ellen Thompson, Senate Chief Clerk. Mr. Speaker, Message 101. Mr. Speaker, the Senate adopted the Committee of the Whole report, failing the bills listed below by the vote indicated. Senate File Number 10, Department of Transportation Statutory Amendments. Ayes 3, noes 24, excused 2, absent 1. This bill has been indefinitely postponed. Sincerely, Ellen Thompson, Senate Chief Clerk.
Thank you, Chief Clerk. Just for the members of the public who may want to hear the proceedings and visualize the screen that may be in the chamber, on the first floor of the Capitol, rooms 113 for the House and room 110 for the Senate, there's a place for the public to view the proceedings. Chief Clerk, reports from standing committees, please.
Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 2, Appropriations, to whom was referred House Bill 2, School Buildings and Facilities Study, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representative Kinner, Larson Lloyd, Nicholas, Schwartz, Simpson, Stiff, Walters. Representative Nicholas, Chairman. Mr. Speaker, your Committee Number 2, Appropriations, to whom was referred House Bill 17, Range Management at Military Training Areas, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass with the following amendments. Ayes, Representative Kinner, Larson Lloyd, Nicholas, Schwartz, Simpson, Stiff. No, Walters. Representative Nicholas, Chairman. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 2, to whom was referred House Bill 18, Military Training Memorials, respectfully reports same back to the House with recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representative Kinner, Larson Lloyd, Nicholas, Stiff, Walters. No, Schwartz, Simpson. Representative Nicholas, Chairman. Mr. Speaker, your committee number 2, Appropriations, to whom was referred House Bill 29, Burials for Indigent Persons, respectfully report same back to the House with the recommendation that it do pass. Ayes, Representatives Kinner, Larson Lloyd, Nicholas, Schwartz, Simpson, Stiff, Walters. Signed, Representative Nicholas, Chairman.
Thank you, Chief Clerk. So members, we're going to begin our second reading. And I just for the members of the public and maybe some members, if you go on to the Legislative Home site, under calendars, you can pull up the House calendar, and bills on second and third reading are done in numerical order. Unless there's a reason to lay one back because an amendment, we're awaiting amendment or something. They're generally done in numerical order, unlike Committee of the Whole, which is the prerogative of the majority floor leader. So House of 66 House of Representatives, we're now at that order of business of bills on second reading. The first bill for our consideration is House Bill 3.
House Bill 3, sponsored by Labor, Certified Addiction Practitioner Certification Amendments.
Thank you. There is an amendment on the bill. And just to remind members, if you go to your amendment page, you can pull up the amendments by entering the, and I'm doing it right now, so my apologies, entering the amendment number and it'll pull it up. Representatives, actually I don't have a committee of the second reading amendment. It's not been entered yet. So Chief Clerk, do you have an amendment up on for your screen?
I have the copy of it, sir. Let me see if I can find it.
Mr. Speaker,
Yes, sir.
if you go to House Bill 3 in the actual legislation list
Okay.
and click on the amendments tab, it is listed there.
Okay, my apologies, members. You'll have to go to the bills, House Bill 3, and then pull up amendments. And there is an amendment, second reading amendment. Representative Stivar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I bring amendment to House Bill 3, page number 3. The reason I'm bringing this amendment is the 2,000 hours. That needs to go away. There's a national standard out there for NADAC and the ICRC for the accreditations for these programs. I'll go through the amendment and explain some more. On page 3, line 6, delete the 2,000. Page 3, line 7, delete the 2,000, insert an equivalency or a greater number of. And then page 3, line 9, after therapy, insert as required by the national standards for accreditation in the field of addiction therapies as accepted by the board. Right now, the board, the ICRC is a state requirement. We are not members of the ICRC, but they do accept other states, that people that are licensed under the ICRC to come into the state. The NADAC standards is required 6,000 hours. We wouldn't want a physician only completing 1/3 of his internship before, and then turn him loose as a physician. We need to do what's best for the citizens of the state of Wyoming and the people they're serving on these standards.
Thank you very much, Representative Stivar. So just a reminder to the body, and certainly maybe a reminder for all of us, new members particularly, maybe that we only get two responses in the second and third reading. So Representative Stivar, as the sponsor of the amendment, that was his first time to speak. And then he'll get the last time. And then we'll go first time, any member for their first time, and then any member for their second time. So what I do as the chairman is I just keep track. So Stivar was first, he's the amendment sponsor. He's had his one time, he'll go last. So now I see that Chairman Wilson has her hand up. So this will be her first time. And then we'll exhaust anybody else that wants to go for their first time before anybody gets a second time at the mic. And this
Point
is the
of
way,
order, Mr. Speaker.
please.
We need to move the amendment. The language is not used correct. So,
all right, my apologies, and we'll do that. But I just want, let's finalize this, that you get two times, exhaust all first times, and then we go to second times, and then the sponsor. So Representative Stivar, thank you, Representative Brown, for that. Would you move the amendment, please?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I move second reading amendment number 2 to House Bill 003.
Is it second number 2 or number 1? Just to be clear.
This is number 2, doesn't it?
It should be second reading amendment number 1.
The second reading.
Okay, I'm just pulling it up too. Sorry, members.
Yeah, yours is, but it is a number 1 in the system. So.
Okay, so just to clarify for the public and for members, Representative Stivar has one that physically says number 2, but on the website it is Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1 to House Bill number 3. So any member for their first time after the sponsor, and I apologize for the rough start there, get the cobwebs shaked out, as the former speaker used to say. Chairman Wilson, first time.
Sorry. More cobwebs with the mute button. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and against the amendment. I think that this paragraph is excellent as it stands, and just want to point out a couple of things. First, just putting national standards groups into our statute, I think it's preferable to actually have a number. This morning, just now, I've gone on and found a national standards group that actually says 2,000 hours, and only 600 of them need to be in direct client contact. So, I mean, I think that there would be variety, and it would be much better for the person applying for this certification to actually know in statute what the number of hours is. I want to further just point out in the bill and in current law on page 2, if a person gets an addictions degree, then there's no work requirement in statute for them at all. The university in our state does not have this degree. Looking up the possibilities through our interstate compact, I won't mention the name, but there are only four universities in this interstate compact that a Wyoming kid could leave Wyoming. They would have to leave Wyoming, and they could go to New Mexico, they could go to North Dakota, the far side of South Dakota, or Washington State, hopefully come back, but maybe once they're there, they will stay. The paragraph on page 3 is our opportunity to grow people in the state who want to go into this field. They can get an associate's degree at several of our community colleges, and then go to the university and finish off with another degree, a bachelor's degree, say in social work or something like that. Put in either a year of full-time work or maybe 2 years of half-time work while they're working on their bachelor's degree, really get some good experience, pass the same test, and be able to do that in the state for our local folks who are willing to stay around. I think that what we have arrived at with the 2,000 hours is a very good, very workable, and I recommend against changing it for something that's as fuzzy as national standards as accepted when they might go up and down. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and against.
Thank you, Chairman Wilson. Vice Chairman Hallinan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm on and against this amendment. The Board of Mental Health Professions Licensing Board conducted a very large degree of negotiations with this addictions group. Now, I don't believe that I am an expert on what is needed in the mental health field, but I believe that the Mental Health Board is an expert. And they thought that this bill was appropriate and that this 2,000 hour limit was the appropriate limit. I don't know what NADAC uses to set their, sets their requirements either. But I don't know that we need to support NADAC over our own Mental Health Professions Licensing Board. And for that reason, Mr. Chairman, I am against this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chairman. Representative Jennings.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and for this amendment. Folks, I don't know what the level should be here, but I know there's a big disparity between 2,000 and 6,000. And we've heard testimony that some go as high as 10,000, I think is what we heard yesterday. So I don't know exactly, but 2,000 is a long way toward the bottom end of this. And I understand the industry is hurting and they're looking for people. But let's be cautious. We have people's well-being in our hands. So on and for.
Thank you, Representative Jennings. Representative Conley, Madam Minority Floor Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First for a second.
Thank you. So members of the body that may be not familiar with this, Representative Conley just reserved her time for a second time. So if you don't speak the first time, you don't get a second time. So what Minority Floor Leader did was just say, I may want to speak later, and I'm going to reserve that opportunity. So that's something that procedurally you may have seen before. I see Representative Larson Lloyd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First for a second as well.
Thank you. Representative Clifford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and against the amendment. I'm new to this committee, and what I had heard from constituents in my district is that this will help with the high need as far as the reservation in the district that I serve. And again, I just want to highlight, where the whole state of Wyoming is a health prevention shortage area. And mental health care and taking care of the mental health need of Wyomingites is very important. And I just don't think this amendment is going to help the efforts that's been vetted in the committee and with the mental health professionals of this to do our due diligence to take care of those mental health needs throughout the state of Wyoming. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Clifford. Representative Fortner, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think we ought to look at compromise. I think 6,000 hours is a good standard, but I also think a minimum to get started should be right in the 3,000 hour range with accumulating the other hours in the field. I think that would be acceptable to gain the experience. And in the field experience, I think you should have to accumulate those in 3 to 4 years prior to having your 3,000 hours. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative Fortner. So members, I just want to make sure that we always, and no one has done anything incorrect so far, but we're always speaking to the amendment, to the intent of the amendment within the bill. That is what we're speaking to. So we're all in good shape, but I just want to keep that we're germane on the amendment. Representative Provenza, for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm asking that you vote against the amendment today. I heard from folks in my community that are working in this field, and I have heard beyond my time during the legislature, there's not enough service and care here. And I think there's a good vetting process. I think that the professionals have supported this in committee for a reason. And the harder we make this, the harder we make it for people to get access to care. And that, quite frankly, can cost lives. So
Representative Provenza,
access in mental health services. So please vote against the amendment. My apologies, Mr. Speaker.
no, it's fine, Representative Provenza. I'm not sure if it's on our end or your end, but there was a bit of a freeze in your audio and your video. So I just wanted to give you that heads up. So maybe please mute and then we'll go on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Representative Olson, for your first time.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm on and against the amendment. I am a little uncomfortable. Well, let me back up and say, I like the idea that we're having the conversation about what the sweet spot is for the hours, but I'm a little uncomfortable, making that big of a change on the floor. It sounds to me like, as I listen to the good members of the committee on health who saw this bill and saw testimony on it, that conversation already took place inside the committee. And, that's where you have all the stakeholders at the table, and that's where you have all the experts providing testimony. And so it seems like it's well vetted. It seems like we've gone through that process and found what we believe to be, whether it's a compromise or a sweet spot number, I don't know. But I feel more comfortable knowing that we went through the stakeholders and we went through the experts. As big of a change as this might be, whether it's right or wrong, I don't know, because I wasn't there for the testimony. But I'm gonna place my trust with the good committee who vetted this well. So I'm gonna be on and against this amendment.
Thank you. Further discussion. This is further members for their first time. Representative Brown.
Just first for a second, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Any other members wish to address this amendment for their first time? Representative Ottman.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, thank you. I'm going to speak against the amendment. I was in those meetings over the summer. I listened because I wasn't on the committee yet. And as a new member on the committee, I have listened to what the committee has done over the last few years and the need that there is. While education is always a wonderful thing, and I know that this is a health profession that would have additional training all the time as things change and as knowledge changes. But I believe that we're trending towards not just a bachelor's or a master's in a subject to be an expert. I believe that this is a place where let me see, work experience is good. These entry-level positions are not going to be paying $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year. They are going to be lower than that. These people get in there, and as my colleague from my county has said, these are needs that are happening now, and our populations are very diverse, from cities to rural to different things. And so we need people that have been working with these people and with the healthcare people in their area, because it is very diverse, and only through work training, I believe, is it going to be effective. And we really, in this county, our healthcare professionals are saying, please get something, please get some boots on the ground. And so while we don't want to negate training and supervision, we do want to get that started. So I would vote against this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Other members for their first time, Representative Haraldson, and then Yin, and then Bear.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Working in this field personally, I do believe that we need to be careful that we don't eliminate the criteria for people to be in these positions and hold these positions, because they have the ability to direct the course of someone's life, and that's something we need to take very seriously. Now, do I fully agree it needs to be 6,000 hours? I believe you could have 6,000 hours and still be poor at it. So I think it also needs to be a vetting people thing, where we get people who are good at doing this. Is there a need for more? Absolutely. So I guess I'm not saying that that 6,000 is the answer, but at the same time, I think we need to be very careful that we don't eliminate the criteria and get a whole bunch of people in there that are just looking for a paycheck, that aren't caring about the people. So anyways, I think it's a conversation that needs to continue on, and we need to make sure we find an area where ultimately the people of this great state have the ability to get the help they need from the people that are desiring to give it, and do it in a way that is professional and helpful.
Thank you very much. Representative Yin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On the amendment, I just wanted to provide some context on the amendment. So when we talk about 2,000 hours equates to about 50 work weeks. So 50 work weeks will be approximately a year, probably a little more than a year, to be honest. And I just wanted to provide everyone that context of translating how much 2,000 hours actually is. It's a year of supervised work training. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Representative Bear, for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First for a second.
Thank you. Representative Schwartz.
Thank you, Mr.
Hold
Speaker.
on.
First for a second.
I think Representative Provenza, I think you got your audio back, but if you would mute it, that'd be great. Thank you. Any other members for their first time? Any other members for their first time? And I usually say this 3 times. It's kind of like an auctioneer, going once, going twice. All right, Representative Nyman. And Representative O'Hearn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm sorry about that. I don't have a hand raise on my setup here for some reason, so I appreciate you noticing me out here. I guess I would like to just offer this as an idea. I mean, I can fully understand how we are desperate to get these people involved, because this is a desperate need, but I guess I'm speaking against the amendment and would not support it, but I would like to, as a caveat, I would really like to see some discussion here about starting these people at 2,000 hours. I think that's a fine way to get them going, but I'd like to see an amendment formed or some kind of conversation here that would require approximately 250 hours per year in addition, and help them continue in their education and continue to grow and develop, and not let them just stop there. Get them started, get it going. The need is there, but provide some means or some incentive to each year that they would need as they would operate in this field, that they would be required to do continuing education and develop out to those extended hours. And so I stand against the amendment, but would like to see more discussion in regards to continuing education. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. And Representative O'Hearn is next, and then Representative Williams. Thank you very much, Representative O'Hearn. It's noted. I have Representative Williams next, and then Representative Martinez. Representative Williams, for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Speaking in favor of the amendment, and also having worked on an inpatient substance abuse unit, I can speak first-handedly that there is definitely a shortage of certified addiction professionals and certified addiction professional assistants in the state of Wyoming. More importantly, there's a high burnout rate in this occupation. Treatment plans and progress reports are followed intensely by the qualified clinical supervisor in which they work under. I appreciate the movement that this bill proposes. However, I'm supportive of the idea of increasing the number of hours of supervised work experience. And my hope is that our Wyoming community colleges offer programs similar to the one that's offered at Casper College.
Thank you very much. Representative Martinez, for your first time.
Representative Romero Martinez, I'm on and against this amendment. I made some comments yesterday. It's not like you're just starting them off at zero. You have people in the field already with an associate's degree in a related field, and we can't just pigeonhole one national organization. We've already seen that there are different standards. So until we get into the nitty-gritty of those standards and start working with those people, maybe it's true that we need to have this discussion, which I suggested yesterday by good members of our body. And I think we're onto the right course here. We just need to get it. A person with an associate's degree in sociology or psychology or related fields isn't just starting off and then just getting what one of the good representatives just mentioned was equates to 50 weeks or a year of supervised training. So I'm against the amendment, but I do support the current bill that's been vetted for 3 years. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. Representative Burt. Representative Burt, I didn't hear what you said. There was a bit of an echo and maybe the keying.
Right, how about now, sir?
A little better. Go ahead.
I'd like to just reserve for my second.
Thank you. Any other members for their first time? We have exactly 1/3 of the body who has spoken on this amendment. Any members want to speak for a first time? Any other members for a first time? Any members for a first time? Any member for a second time? So at this point, members, only those who have spoken or reserved time, which is also speaking, can address the chamber again. Anyone for their second time? Chairman Wilson.
I was really good yesterday about remembering to turn off my mute. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, on and against the amendment. And I just want to make sure that we're really staying focused on what we're asking here, because there's been a little bit of a drift. If you look at the bill on the bottom of page 2, we have the existing standards for a person who has a bachelor's degree specifically in addiction therapy. Okay, so that would be a 4-year degree in addiction therapy. No work hours are required. Now, in their degree, they will have most likely, and I woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning and started doing internet research, they will have done practicums and that sort of thing, during it. But there's no specific work hours in addition to the bachelor's degree in addictions therapy. Then we turn over to page 3. What we're trying to do there is if a person has a different bachelor's degree. So let's suppose that the person goes and gets an associate's degree. There are 3 different places in Wyoming where you could get an associate's degree, and you would have 5, 8, 9 classes in addictions therapy specifically. And then you would have to go to a university and get a bachelor's degree in a related field. So let's just say social work. To get your bachelor's degree in social work, you will also be doing practicums. And then we request them to have an additional year of work experience in the addictions field. Okay, so these are the 2 categories of people, both with bachelor's degrees, one specific to addictions, no work hours. The second that we're adding, people who have coursework in addictions, get their bachelor's degree in a human behavioral field and work for a year. And somehow what the amendment is saying is that to have basically an associate's degree in addictions, then have a behavioral health bachelor's degree and a year of work, that we would actually need 3 years of work to be comparable to a person just getting their bachelor's degree in addictions therapy with no work. To me, that doesn't make sense. To me, to say that part of the coursework, a full bachelor's degree, and a year of work in the field, I think that that's a great place to land, especially when you consider the people who come out with a bachelor's degree in addictions therapy and we're not requiring work. I don't think it makes sense to say, fine, we can take a person right out of school, or we'll take you out of school plus 3 years of work, make you both take the same test, and somehow it's not adequate until we've really piled on the years. I just really, we want to stay focused on the 2 comparable levels of what we're trying to do with bachelor's degree people. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and against.
Thank you, Chairman Wilson. Vice Chair Hallinan. Second time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman or Mr. Speaker. I think we need to remember that these folks are required, that have this degree in a related field, they're required to work for 2,000 hours in equivalent to a CAPA, which is a Certified Addiction Professional Associate. So they have to work in that position for 2,000 hours before they're before they can get a Certified Addiction Professional certificate. And during that time, they have to be under the leadership of a master's level in the mental health field. So those folks have to have all kinds of supervision for 2,000 hours. And I think at that period of time, I think we can say that they have achieved the ability to function as a certified addiction professional. And that is the opinion of the Mental Health Professions Licensing Board. And they are the people that know the field better than I do and better than anybody else here in this group. So I think we need to support them and approve this bill. This is a bill that they approve, and I approve it also. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Representative Jennings for your second time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I think that we all are in favor of this bill, and I think maybe some of this conversation has gotten off of the amendment. But back to the amendment aspect of this, I guess my question is, what if this was your child or your grandchild? We would want to hold the highest standards, and I think I don't know exactly where the sweet spot is, but I'm here in industry that is desperately in need of workers. I get that, but sometimes what we do in a hurry to fix a problem creates other problems, and so on and for.
Thank you very much. Any members for their second time? Any members for their second time? Representative Schwartz.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and against the amendment, and I would just like to remind the body that on page 2, line 2, in addition to these 2,000 hours, it's subject to any other restrictions which may be specified by the board. So I think it's a belt and suspenders here. I think we have adequate requirements here to ensure that we get qualified professionals in these jobs. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other member for their second time? Member for their second time. So this is only those eligible who spoke for the first time. Representative Brown for your second time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm just going to rehash a few of the points that have already been made in hopes that people understand that this number one was not done in a hurry. This was an interim topic and was discussed at length by this committee. As it was discussed at length, this was the discussion that came forward, and these were the recommendations that came from these professionals. I think it's important for us to remember that us as a body, the infinite wisdom of the 60 of us, I don't know that we have any of us in here that have gone through the mental health and addiction counseling level of college and or work experience. So I think it's hard for us to determine what would be good or not. And that's why we lean on the experts in their field. And that's why we have come to them over the interim, and they've reported to us that they believe that this would be good. The other thing that's important to notice here is that's been stated multiple times. We're talking about somebody with a 4-year degree in a human sciences degree, plus another year of service. I think it's been stated enough times, but I think we're at the position right now where we don't want to restrict this down to having somebody do a 4-year degree and then another 3 years of work experience on top of that as well. So, Mr. Speaker, with that, I am on and against the amendment, and I would urge a no vote. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any member for their second time? Any additional member for their second time? I don't see any hands waving, and I don't see any hands in the chamber. Representative Fortner, I think I just, Representative Provenza, my apologies, Representative Provenza.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sorry, I pushed my hand a moment ago and it didn't work. So hopefully, is my internet working?
It's better. Go ahead, please.
Okay, I'll just make a quick point that in case I didn't get to it or it wasn't heard my lagging internet. I know two people personally since the beginning of this year, which was 28 days ago, who have committed suicide because they struggled through this pandemic. And there's so many people in our districts and across our state that are struggling. And I'm on and against this amendment because I think adding all of these hours after this process has been vetted is going to cost us dearly. So on and against the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any members for their second time? Any other members for their second time? Members for their second time before the sponsor? Nobody for their second time. We're back to the sponsor, Representative Stivar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On and for the amendment. I am a member of the Labor Committee. I know WAMSAC just gave information. They didn't support or deny the bill. They just gave information. Again, are we going to start putting hours in and go away from the standards? Again, a physician, 1/3 of the required classes that he needs to take, we're just going to turn him loose and let him go out and be a doctor. We need to do this. And again, the ICRC test, each state determines the requirements. We're not a member of the ICRC state. I just got that from the licensing board, but they do accept the standards if they're already licensed in other states, or they can go over and take that test in another state and get accredited in another state. That license will be accepted in Wyoming. The NADAC standards for a bachelor's is 6,000 hours. As a social worker, you have to do 3,000 hours before you get licensed as a licensed clinical social worker working under another master's degree social worker. So on and for the amendment, and I call for the question.
Thank you very much, Representative Stivar. So we're now voting on second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 3. All those in favor of amendment, please raise your hand to your screen. In favor of the amendment, raise your hand to the screen. Thank you. All those opposed? Thank you. The amendment has failed. A division having been called, Chief Clerk, would you please call the roll? So members, just so you know, if a member doesn't believe or doesn't think that actually the division was called off, so there will not be a division. But just for the purposes of educating the body, if a member doesn't kind of not trust, the trust in the chair is not the right word, but thinks that maybe the voice vote, particularly on a voice vote, they're not sure that that was accurate, what the chairman ruled, they can call for a division. And it's generally a standing division. But because we're on a Zoom platform, we just go straight to a roll call. And so then the chief clerk would call the roll. So thank you. So House Bill 3, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a 3rd time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 6.
Trust company amendments.
Is that all the reading we get? I forgot.
Yes.
Chief Clerk.
I did it wrong last time, so that's it.
My apologies. That was, pretty short and sweet. I see no amendments to House Bill 6. Therefore, House Bill 6, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a 3rd time? Hearing no objections, it is so ordered. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 8.
Consumer credit amendments.
Thank you. House Bill 8 does have an amendment. And for the members of the body that and the public, if you refresh the amendment page fairly regularly, amendments do come up. So House Bill 8 does have an amendment, and I believe it is Representative Stith.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. Members of the House, I move the adoption of second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 8. The purpose here is to address the problem of when you go buy a vehicle and the dealership sells you an insurance policy to protect against the risk that you might become unemployed and can't make your vehicle payments. The insurance is there to make your payments in the event you get are disabled or unemployed, for example. The entire cost of that insurance will be put into your vehicle contract. So your $40,000 vehicle now costs you $42,000. If you go home 2 months later and then decide to cancel that, the fair thing that should happen is that since you've paid for 6 years worth of insurance premium, the fair thing that should happen is that the insurance company, which is no longer taking any risk on you, should have to refund at least a portion of your premium. So, and I believe the chairman of the Minerals Committee from House District 27 yesterday indicated that was the intent of the bill. However, the language of the bill as amended doesn't do that. So what this amendment does is to restore the original language of House Bill 8. So on page 2, lines 15 through 18, it makes it clear that if you do cancel your insurance, that some portion of your premium that is unearned by the insurance company will be, in fact, be refunded to you. Subsection B on page 3 provides that the regulatory authority has the authority to write rules to also make it fair to the insurance company. Okay, as the chairman pointed out yesterday, the insurance company is taking the biggest risk in the early part of the contract and less risk toward the end of the contract. So if you cancel your insurance early, then you shouldn't get back necessarily a pro rata amount of the premium, but you should get back something. So if we don't have this amendment, then you can just, the insurance company will just get the unearned premium. So, and I would stand for any questions.
Thank you, Representative Stith. Chairman Greer, for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition to the amendment, but appreciate the discussion. And I do know the bringer of the amendment is very knowledgeable in this area and respect that. I think, though, the proposed amendment doesn't accomplish the goals here that we're trying to get to. And the reason that the Standing Committee amendment came in was, one, was a cleanup, and with respect to page 2 and on subsection A, the language regarding a voluntary cancellation it doesn't fit there, and it is superfluous. A termination is a termination. I would suggest and be open to a third reading amendment with respect to subsection Romanet 2 on page 3, wherein the definition of termination under this particular chapter, that maybe we could include the provision regarding a voluntary termination with it. And I think that would be a much better form and much clearer within the bill. So I would ask that we leave the Standing Committee amendment in, be more willing to work with the sponsor of the amendment on that particular issue. Now, with respect to the second part of the Standing Committee amendment, which would be removed as a result of this pending amendment, this is what the testimony was when we came down within this very specialized area of insurance. And personally not a big fan of these product lines, but they exist, and that's fine. But what we find is that the individual contracts do vary. And so those contracts that are out there are in place, those forms are in place, those practices have been followed. And the reason this was struck out was it felt as if this statute would then override all of those contracts. The statute would also interfere with that contracting authority. Now, we are talking about consumer protection. So that is what we do in consumer protection, is we make sure contracts aren't onerous. But again, the bill with it is cleaner if we pull out this mandatory language that's on page 3, starts on line 8, but it's really lines 9 through 12, to say that it has to go to the underlying debt. That's probably what happens in most cases, but that should be left to the contract that's written and what's in place. To the issue that the bringer of the amendment makes, and he's right. I mean, it is a real concern. We went through a great deal of discussion of what is fair to the consumer, what is fair to the companies, because if it's not fair to the companies, then the insurance doesn't exist. This product doesn't exist. And that's where we came to the conclusion is if it's terminated, we said pro rata. Okay, well, pro rata probably isn't fair to the companies, but then we went ahead and allowed that rulemaking process so that could be hammered out with a look at actuarials, quite frankly, because that's the only way you're going to find some reasonably fair approach to it. So these are well thought out. Again, appreciate the amendment, appreciate the discussion. I would ask the body to vote no on this amendment. And I've, as always, being just a very rational, reasonable person I am, more than willing to work on helping change that definition under subsection 2.
Thank you, Chairman Greer. And for those that have been on the floor before, observed floor proceedings before, it's very difficult for Chairman Greer to testify without something in both hands, both an amendment and a green book. So thank you for that restraint. I have Representative Gray and then Vice Chair Duncan. Representative Gray, for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to note, I believe I support this amendment. I read both of these changes in committee as weakening consumer protection, and I voted no on the amendments in committee, and I appreciate Representative Stiff pointing it out. And if I'm wrong on this, I'd encourage people to point out where I'm wrong. I appreciate the chairman of the committee and his work on this, but I had concerns about this in committee, and I think for protection of the consumer, this is a good amendment, and it might need further cleanup on third reading too.
Thank you. And just a reminder to folks, let's use, not use their individuals' names as we're speaking on the floor. Vice Chairman Duncan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. First for a second.
That's fine. Thank you very much. I have you marked down. Any other members for their first time? Members for their first time, I see Chairman Zwanitzer. Please proceed.
Thanks, Mr. Speaker. I'm inclined to support the amendment. I guess my question is, it's a committee bill. I've looked at the notes. It's been heard 2 or 3 times. Where did the standing committee amendment come from? Was it brought from a trade group or someone testifying on the bill or one of the attorneys on the committee? I guess I just need some background on why it's a committee bill that got a standing committee amendment. I didn't hear that was well explained.
I see Representative Haroldson.
First for a second.
Thank you. Any other member for their first time? This is members for their first time on standing committee amendment, or excuse me, committee of the whole amendment number 1 to House Bill 8. Any other member for their first time? And if members, if for some reason your raised hand isn't working and I can't see you, please unkey your key your mic and let me know. Seeing no one for their first time, no one else for their first time, we're now to second time before the sponsor. Anyone for their second time? Representative Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just wanted to answer that question. My recollection is the change on page 2 was brought by a trade group. I do not recall on the change on page 3, but I do remember on the change on page 2. Just wanted to answer that. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Gray. Any other member for their second time? Second time, Chairman Greer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yeah, and thank you to the good representative back on the Minerals Committee. Yeah, it was a trade group that had brought both of those amendments in the House Standing Committee meeting. It had also been a point, though, that had been discussed throughout the interim, and this bill was worked heavily. We assigned a subcommittee that took an extra day of work on this, just because of all the varying groups that came together and because of the breadth of the bill. So it had been vetted well. This particular issue, when we worked it as an interim committee, was still sitting there as part of the discussion. When we got to the House Standing Committee meeting on this, those two particular issues were addressed again. The arguments were much clearer. The commission, which regulates that, had no objection to those or any reasons why they weren't in order. And so again, I'll go back and restate this again. With respect to that in section A on page 2, the termination's a termination. We don't need to, for sake of a cleaner statute, call out voluntary termination. If we want to make sure that we're clear about voluntary termination, the proper place would be on the next page in Romanette 2, where it says we're under definitions of termination, to include that. I think it would be a reasonable and a good cleanup. With respect to subsection B, the second amendment on that, again, I am cautious whenever we pass statutes that tell people what they're going to do in a situation where things have been working already. And so I would just leave that to go back to how they contract. I am, from what I understand, almost all the cases is the refund's going to be applied to the underlying debt anyway, but there may be different types of these product loan or product insurance where the situation is different. And I would allow those products to be able to develop as they should. So again, good discussion, and I urge a no vote on the amendment.
Thank you, Chairman Greer. Vice Chair Duncan, for your second time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I urge a no vote on the amendment, but I do encourage, if you want to fix it, as our chairman suggested earlier, on a third reading. There was a large amount of testimony from different entities besides the division. And some of what was discussed and an issue with was the fact that there wasn't a parity in the way it was calculated. There wasn't a parity with these products when they transfer their loan for a car dealership, for example, and then they sell the loan to another lender. So there's different parities and fees in there. So there was a lot of testimony by these extra entities besides just the lenders or the bankers. So it was a very complex and a very heavy lift to this bill. And so the whole idea behind all of this was parity. So I would strongly urge a no on this, and let's work it to fix those issues that our bringer of the amendment has in another amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members for their second time? Second time. All right, second time, seeing none, we're back to the sponsor. Representative Stith.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. So members, just know when you vote yes on this amendment, you're voting for the consumer. You're voting for the little guy, okay? Which is why I think you should vote for this. With respect to page 3, paragraph B, right now the current language, the language that this amendment reinserts is the original language from the bill, which says that the creditor, the insurance company or the dealership, may apply the refund to any amounts owed in the event of default. It doesn't say they have to, okay? So when House District 27's, when the member was objecting that this would unnecessarily restrict their ability to contract, there's nothing in the original language of subsection B, which this amendment restores, that restricts their ability to contract with respect to what happens. And the issue here is, if you cancel your insurance early, do you get a check back from the insurance company, or does it just get applied to amounts that you owe? That's kind of the issue there. And there's nothing that this amendment would do that restricts their ability to contract. So what's been suggested as an alternative third reading amendment, that might work also. I mean, there are different ways to get things done. We all want the same goal here, I think. But I think this amendment, frankly, does it now, and does it better because it also puts in that language on page 3 there that lets them apply it, the refund, how they may want to. So having said that, urge a yes vote on the amendment.
Thank you, Representative Stith. So members, we are voting on second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 8. All those in favor of the amendment, please raise your hand. Thank you. All those opposed? All right. This is very difficult. So Chief Clerk, would you please call the roll on second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 8?
Andrew,
No.
Baker,
Aye.
Banks,
Aye.
Bear,
No.
Blackburn,
Aye.
Brown,
Aye.
Burkhart,
No.
Burt,
No.
Clausen,
Aye.
Clifford,
No.
Connolly,
Aye.
Crago,
No.
Duncan,
No.
Eklund,
And no vote on the floor, Chief Clerk.
thank you. Air,
No.
Flitner,
No.
Fortner,
Aye.
Gray,
Aye.
Greer,
No.
Hallinan,
Aye.
Haroldson,
Aye.
Harshman,
No.
Heiner,
No.
Henderson,
No.
Hunt,
Aye.
Jennings,
Aye.
Kinner,
No.
Knapp,
Aye.
Larson Lloyd,
No.
Larson Dan,
Aye.
McGuire,
No.
Aye.
McGuire, repeat please.
This is Representative McGuire, the no.
McGuire, no. Martinez,
No.
Nyman,
Aye.
Newsom,
Aye.
Nicholas,
No.
Oakley,
Aye.
Obermuller,
No.
O'Hearn,
No.
Olson,
No.
Ottman,
Aye.
Paxton,
No.
Provenza,
No.
Frosco,
No.
Schwartz,
Aye.
Sherwood,
No.
Simpson,
Aye.
Summers,
Aye.
Stith,
Aye.
Stibar,
Aye.
Sweeney,
No.
Walters,
Aye.
Washit,
Aye.
Western,
No.
Worf,
Aye.
Williams,
Aye.
Wilson,
No.
Winter,
Aye.
Yin,
Aye.
Zawanitzer.
No.
Mr. Speaker,
No.
closing vote. Are there any changes?
Brown, aye to no.
Brown, aye to no. Further changes? Further changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. 28 aye, 32 no.
Thank you, Chief Clerk. So I guess that demonstrates why looking at the screen was fairly difficult to try to call that one. That also demonstrated another thing, members, that you can change the ability to change your vote after the vote. So I don't remember if we did any of that yesterday, but thank you. So Standing Committee Amendment Committee of the Whole Amendment number 1 to House Bill 8.
Second reading amendment, please.
Thank you. Second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 8 has failed. House Bill 8 having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Next bill for consideration is House Bill 9.
House Bill 9, sponsored by Minerals, Short Time Compensation Program, an act relating to labor and employment.
House Bill 9 has no amendments. House Bill 9 having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 13.
House Bill 13, sponsored by corporations, alcoholic beverage regulation, an act relating to the regulation of alcoholic and malt beverages.
Thank you. There is a second reading amendment. Representative Washut.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 13 and ask for your favorable decision.
Thank you. Please explain your amendment if you'd like.
The amendment is fairly straightforward. It simply reverts back to the original language. You might remember our discussion yesterday about the 108 liters of wine. I believe that this ability to import such a large quantity of wine from online sales will be detrimental to our retailers here in Wyoming. And I just think that 36 liters is an adequate amount. Served us well for the last several years. I enjoy wine as much as anyone, but I'm happy to walk down to the brick and mortar liquor store in my neighborhood and make my purchase and support a Wyoming retailer. So I think that 36 liters is adequate. And I would just ask everyone to support your local retail establishments and vote aye on this amendment.
Thank you, Representative Washut. Any member wish to speak to this for their first time? Representative Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and against the amendment, and ladies and gentlemen, I certainly respect and admire the call for supporting local retailers and supporting Wyoming businesses. However, I don't believe it's the government's job to do this. I don't believe for a second that it's our body's job to protect Wyoming businesses over any other business out there. I think that's free market enterprise, and I think that that's what we stand for in a lot of our principles here in Wyoming. So I would venture to say that I think we have slowly but surely started chipping away at our alcoholic legislation that we've had in the books for hundreds of years now, or 100+ years. And as we've been going after these particular pieces of alcoholic related statute, each time we find a reason to keep it the exact way that it is. And ladies and gentlemen, I'm here to just say again, the definition of an insanity is continuing to do the same thing over and over and over again and expecting different results. And frankly, we've continued to do the same thing to protect our Wyoming businesses, and it's not doing anything to help our end users. And I think that if our end users want to be able to direct ship wine into their house, we should let them. Who are we as a body to sit there and tell people you cannot bring this in? You must go down to your local liquor store and support your local liquor store over getting wine shipped to you from California or Oregon. So I'm going to rise on and against this amendment, Mr. Speaker, and I hope that we can get this body to move forward with a little bit of 21st century thinking and move us forward in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So we are on first time on this amendment, and just reminding the body that we speak to the amendment. speak to the amendment? And I'm going to just kind of list out, I got a lot of people's hands up, so I'm just going to list out the next three. It's going to be Duncan, Henderson, and then Hunt.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and against the amendment, let me remind the body. When we do this, we receive tax benefit, which means revenue. We are in a revenue deficit. We are in a budget crisis. And so anytime we can help by not directly affecting raising a sales tax, raising an income tax, or anything like that, anytime we can help not only the state budget, but we can also help our individual members of our state have a little bit more autonomy and be able to decide for themselves. So first of all, this is an increase which creates economic development, and it also increases taxes for the revenue that comes in for the sales and use. Also, we're just being more in line with all the states around us, so that we can receive those benefits versus the states around us. And we saw during this pandemic how many people were allowed, and all of our sales tax that went up, and the convenience and the ease. Now, again, as I testified yesterday, there's no difference. We can either do online, which also equates that we have businesses. A lot of the businesses here in the state have online websites, so we can order these from our local retailers as well as our local wineries and such. So it's not all about out of state. It's also beneficial to our people here within the state. So on and against the amendment.
Thank you, Representative Henderson, for your first time.
First for a second, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. It'll be Hunt, Olson, Newsom. Representative Hunt.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I don't want to reiterate what all has already been said, but as I said yesterday, the current 36-liter limit is something that I addressed a few years ago in a bill of my own, and that was an increase from what it had been prior to that, which, if I remember right, I think was 24. I'm not certain, but anyway, I don't know why. Frankly, I don't think there should be any limit to it. I mean, 108 liters, that certainly should be more than enough to satisfy most anybody. But, the idea that we would restrict people's freedom to purchase as they wish from wherever they wish it goes against the free market, and it goes against the will of your right to purchase products as you see fit. So certainly on and against the amendment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Olson, then Newsom, then Bear.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and against the amendment, and on the amendment to the discussion of the quantity of the liters, 108, 36. Just want to speak specifically, I think, to the intent of what we're trying to do. And I don't want to reiterate too much of what the other speakers have said, but I think I want to be clear that I don't support protectionism by the state. But I want to take it a step further, because I think it's a little confusing if we think of this as supporting Wyoming businesses, this amendment supporting Wyoming businesses, when in fact it may try to do that, but it will also harm Wyoming businesses. I'll give you an example. Depends on what you consider to be a Wyoming business. I have a constituent who direct sells wine. And so as a direct seller of wine, what she does is receive the wine and then distribute it to her patrons. And so she's a Wyoming business. She's a Wyoming individual that supplements her income or maybe even makes a living. I think it's a supplement for her. But the reality is that that's a Wyoming person. So it's not just that these are online stores that are somewhere else out in the world, which we should not be afraid of a world market, as we live in one, and it is a reality. But if we're truly to support Wyoming people and Wyoming businesses, I think that this amendment would do the opposite. I'm with other speakers on the amendment. I would prefer no limit. I think that would be what my constituent would want, as she would want to receive as many boxes as she could and direct sell those to people directly in the community. I'm one that purchases them, so I know the effects in the community for her, for me, for others, and the benefit to the state that they receive from that in terms of revenue. So on and against the amendment, I'd really like to see it go the opposite direction, but I do think the current raising the limit, I do support the good chairman of corporations' intent to try to raise this sum. And I think that incrementalism is appropriate in doing that. So on and against the amendment, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Representative Newsom for your first time.
I have a question that hopefully will be answered even in this first round or second round of testimony. And my good colleague from District 5 touched on it. When a bottle of wine is shipped into Wyoming, is tax paid? And then is that the same tax rate as if I go down to my local store and buy it? That is my question that I would like clarification for. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative Newsom. Just a reminder to all of us to please address the chair as we're seeking acknowledgement. Thank you. Representative Bear for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise on and against the amendment. As a champion of liberty, I do not believe it's the state's responsibility to restrict any perfectly legal product from our citizens. And personally, I do purchase from my local brick and mortar stores whenever possible, but this state's particularly onerous restrictions on alcohol have led my spouse to not getting her favorite wine. And therefore, I do believe that the restrictions are too much. I do also agree with my colleagues who have stated that there really should be no restriction, but I do appreciate this move toward less restriction. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members for their first time? Representative Fortner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I too do not think that the state ought to be picking winners and losers through legislation. I think it ought to be a free market business. That's the way the founders wanted this country. So I would have to be against this amendment.
Thank you. Thank you. I have Chairman Zwanitzer and then Representative Haroldson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just some friendly background as I hear the discussion. We are a control state, have been since 1935. If anybody wants to pursue changing that, feel free. We'll have that discussion. We've had it before. I know where it tends to go each time. To answer the question that was posed from the good representative from the Bighorn Basin, the honest answer is it's very complicated. Right now, the Department of Revenue is interpreting kind of a murky statute to do their best to tax wine that comes from out of state at the same rate that you would pay tax on wine in state. It's not exactly how the statute reads, but the current director of the department has done his best to equate that tax rate in an equal manner. So I hope that answer to the question is yes, we do tax at the same rate statutorily. We need to fix that. I had a bill, I think 3 years ago that didn't make it through the process, but it's relying on goodwill at this time. Just to join in on the fray, I do think 108 is a little extreme from jumping from 4 bottles a month to 12 bottles a month. If somebody wants to bring back a third reading amendment to, make it 8 bottles a month, I would probably be more agreeable, but we should up it a little bit from what it is now.
Thank you. Representative Haroldson for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Obviously, I get to see the detrimental side sometimes of what alcohol can do with my background, but at the same time, it isn't the government's job, in my opinion, to protect people from themselves. And if we do that, then we step on so many different things. So I don't believe that there's an issue with upping these numbers. I believe that people should be responsible, obviously, all the time. And if they would, my job would be easier a lot of times. But it isn't the government's job to protect us. We are all adults here, and we all can protect ourselves. So I think that's something that needs to be thought through as we do this, because that isn't our position or our job.
Thank you. Any other members for their first time? Members for their first time? Representative Knapp, for your first time this session, welcome.
Mr. Chairman, thank you, or Mr. Speaker, thank you. On and against the amendment. I don't drink wine personally, but I know if I walked into a brick and mortar store in Wyoming and bought 109 bottles of wine, the state of Wyoming would have no problem with that. So on and against the amendment.
Thank you very much. Any other member for their first time? Representative Martinez.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Romero Martinez, I am on and against this. I agree with some of our esteemed colleagues that there should be no limit, and just like the city to the north, located between Route 14 and 16, there's a company up there that provides some good juice, and there's also some companies in California that are named after the Trinity in Latin. And I might want to buy 100, or maybe there's a small business that wants to buy 100 bottles of that version of Zinfandel. And so on and against. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, members. Any member wish to partake in the first round? Any member for their first time? Any member for their first time?
Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I see Representative Sherwood's hand is up.
I apologize. Representative Sherwood, for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is just a first for a second.
Thank you. Any other member for their first time? And I'll scroll the screen. Any other member for their first time? Any member who spoke their first time for a second time? Members for their second time before the sponsor. Members for their second time before the sponsor. Apparently we've caught everybody on a restroom break. Anybody for their second time? Representative Duncan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll address and elaborate on our Chairman of Corporations comment in response to a question earlier about the taxation. It is being worked on currently to make it more fair and equitable. But however, currently as it is, we are collecting the same amount as if you were going into the store to purchase something. It's a complicated way, but it will be, I do believe out-of-staters, it's complicated. Out-of-staters have to buy a permit, I believe, through the division. And so between that and the taxation, it's at like 17%, I believe, is what the number is. So there is parity currently. So I don't know if that answered your question, but on and against the amendment.
Any other members for their second time? Second time before the sponsor. Seeing none, to the sponsor. Oh, Representative Henderson. My apologies, Representative Henderson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm on in favor of the amendment, and I think we can fix it on third reading with those other comments that were mentioned before. As to limits on the the consumption of alcohol and so forth, we have limits all over the place on various things, and so I think that's not going to change. There's a need here that I think we could reach a compromise on. I can see merit on both sides of the discussion, so on and in favor of the amendment.
Thank you. Any other member for their second time? Member for their second time. Member for their second time, seeing none, to the sponsor, Representative Vice Chair Washington.
Thank you, Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Alcohol in Wyoming is a complicated topic. It's a regulated industry. And if we want to go a more liberal approach and make it completely a market approach, that's a different discussion. I think that we have been well served by the limits that we've had in place for the last number of years. And I think that the retailers in our communities benefit when customers come into their stores and buy these products locally. And it's true that when we order online, the bulk of that business is going to involve out-of-state businesses. There may be a few Wyoming companies, as were mentioned in the debate, which I appreciate, that do engage in this type of business, and they would perhaps be benefited by this language change. But by far and large, wine retailers that we're buying from online come from the states that are renowned for their wineries. And it really is, to me, an opportunity for us when our economy is in difficult straits to try and support the brick and mortar businesses, and to liberalize this law at this time simply opens the door for more out-of-state purchases and the revenue lost to our local retailers. So I just ask you to consider the folks that own those little businesses in your neighborhoods, in your communities, and think about how this bill might affect them. So I appreciate your vote in favor of this amendment.
Thank you, Representative Washut. So members, we're voting on second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 13. All those in favor, please raise your hand to your screen. All those opposed? Thank you. Second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 13 has failed. House Bill 13 having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection is so ordered. House Bill 27. The next bill for our consideration is House Bill 27.
House Bill 27, sponsored by Corporation, Election, and Political Subdivision, Business Code Revisions, an act relating to businesses.
Chief Clerk, I just want to verify I see no amendments.
No.
Thank you. House Bill 27 having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection is so ordered. Next bill for our consideration is House Bill 34.
House Bill 34, sponsored by Judiciary, Youthful Offender Program Amendments, an act relating to the Youthful Offender Program.
There is an amendment. Representative Conley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 34, and I ask for your favorable consideration. Members, we had a good discussion yesterday about this bill, which does some changes for our boot camp program, kind of renaming it to the Youthful Offender Program. I had a little bit of heartburn, if you remember, about the peer specialists, and we had a good discussion about that. And so what this bill does is it assures that what this amendment does in part is it assures that these peer specialists shall not have direct supervision over other inmates. And then because there was concern and interest about this new program, the second portion of it simply has the Department of Corrections report to the Joint Judiciary Committee on the new program. And so I would ask for your favorable consideration.
Thank you, Madam Minority Floor Leader. Any discussion? Chairman Zwanitzer, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I apologize to the body, but can I divide the amendment, please? My Division 1 would be lines 1 through 7, and Division 2 would be lines 8 through 8 to the rest of the page, basically, 8 through 14.
So members, again, we're dividing an amendment, and the chair is reviewing the amendment, and the amendment is divisible. And I believe division number 1 is 1 through 7, and division number 2 is 8 through 16. Is that Can I affirm that with Chairman Swanitzer? All right, so that is our
Yes,
division.
Mr. Speaker.
So members, when we divide an amendment on second reading, we start over with how many times a person can speak. So now we'll start over with, I mean, we've only had a couple of people speak, right? Just the bringer of the amendment. So thank you for doing this early in the process, Chairman Swanitzer. But now we're on to, what division would you like to start with, Chairman Swanitzer?
Can we do Division 2, please, Mr. Speaker?
So we're on Division 2 for your first time, Chairman Swanitzer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members of the body. I would ask you to vote no in this division, quite frankly, because I'm tired of getting reports, and I think members of the body are tired of getting reports, and our executive branch are tired of writing reports. And I just don't think, when I heard the discussion in the committee about the level this is of probably 4 to 6 peer specialists, that somebody has to write up a report and put it in a booklet and send to us, because our executive branch does try to do professional, polished presentations. But in this case, I just don't think we need a report. And so I'd ask you to vote no on this division. The rest of the Division 1 is great, in my opinion.
So I'll go now to the bringer of the original amendment, Representative Madam Minority Flaherty Connolly, and then it'll be Chairman Olson and then Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and in favor of Division 2. There was a robust discussion yesterday about this being a new program, and that our Department of Corrections is in the process of doing some kind of serious reconsideration of both public safety and issues regarding recidivism. And so we've been moving down that road well. And this is a new program, so why not hear about it? It's not asking for a repeated report. It is a new program. Let's just make sure that our Judiciary Committee has that information.
Oh,
I need somebody, Representative Henderson, I think you may need to mute your microphone. Thank you. Chairman Olson, for your first time on Division 2.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm on and in favor of Division 2, one of the sponsors of this amendment. So 2 things real quick. One is that first understand that this report is broader than just the peer specialists. So the language says that the department that houses our inmates shall provide the report on the use of peer specialists and on the outcomes of the youthful offender transition program. So I'm more interested in the second part of that, which is the report of the overall outcome of the program. You know, I've already talked to the department, and I've already talked to the director on this exact amendment, and they don't have, not that that has to be your consideration, but they don't have an issue with this extra report. And I think the reality is that, I mean, you can vote your conscience on this, but with or without the report, there's going to be a report, because the department is going to report to the Appropriations Committee. And undoubtedly, when the budget is discussed at any point, I can imagine appropriators asking the question, how's the new youthful offender program working out? You told us it wasn't going to cost any money. Is that still true? What's the savings look like? I mean, that conversation is already going to happen. From my perspective on the Judiciary Committee, unless there's a bill, they don't come back in front of my committee. Because it is a new program, I would like to take some of that responsibility on behalf of the legislative body to keep an eye on it and help work with the director and build that relationship to shepherd in the new program for his success. And I think so far we are building a really good relationship. So I would not view this as burdensome, but more as we're trying to lend a hand to the new director as he has some really good ideas and is trying to get this new program off and on its new feet. So on and for the division.
Thank you very much. So I'll give a few folks in line. Next will be Representative Gray, followed by Chairman Wilson, Chairman Flitner, Representative Vice Chair Duncan. Representative Gray, first time on Standing Committee Amendment, or second reading Amendment 1 to House Bill 34, Division 2.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm having a weird back feed, so I'm gonna take my thing out. If there's something wrong, just wave at me while I'm talking. Yeah, I'm gonna weigh in on this, but really quick, I appreciate the other point of view on this, but this is kind of important, the issue of legislative oversight. I think when we create a new program, make a big change to a program, I think it's very appropriate to have a reporting mechanism. In fact, I think it's very good legislating. And yes, I know reports can become voluminous, but it's a way for us to exhibit a key part of legislative work, which is legislative oversight, especially within committees. And I've become pretty passionate about that we need to, especially in judiciary, which often has a lot of bills that I think sometimes too many. I think it's appropriate to have more legislative oversight over some of the constituent agencies that come through that committee. So I really like this change, and I'm going to be voting aye on it, and appreciate it. And I vote thank you.
Thank you. Representative Gray, there is some echo with your microphone, so just to give you a heads up. Chairman Wilson, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm not sure whether this should have been a point of order, but as we divided the amendment, we still have requiring a report up on page 1, line 4. So all we've done is take away the specificity, or if this amendment passes, if this section fails, we still have them requiring a report. We just don't say to whom. And I'm not sure if we want to clean that up later on or not. But just to point out also, as chairman, I asked for a lot of reports that weren't specified in statute, and that's my job as chairman. So either way, I don't care, but it's still there at the beginning of the amendment.
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out, Chairman Wilson. And this is one of those places where we get into this funkiness because this is a change in the title to bring in section 2. Yeah, we probably should have looked at that a little closer. I think we'll just continue with the debate though, and dispense with the amendment one way or the other. I had Representative Flitner next. Chairman Flitner.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. I was simply going to ask if lines 1 and 3 needed to be included in Division 2. That was all my question. Same as Chairman Wilson.
And that is actually correct. And I apologize that we didn't, I didn't catch that when we did the division. So we'll continue with debate on this. Representative Duncan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a question to the committee as well as the bringer of the amendment. What is there a cost, and what kind of a cost is associated with these reports? Are they an increase? Are they net zero? So if anyone can give me a little bit of information on that, I'd appreciate it.
Thank you, Representative Baer. First time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to rise in support of this amendment, and I would reiterate what the good representative from the Windy City stated about requiring accountability to the legislature. And I just want to remind this body that Article 4, Section 14 of the Constitution states that this body should be auditing those things which we require of the state and the executive branch, and yet this body has failed to adhere to that amendment, which was passed in 1990. So I think that this is a good opportunity to start reversing the direction that we go and start maintaining accountability to the legislature for the things that we pass. Thank you.
Thank you. Any members for their first time? Any others members for their first time on Division 2? First time on Division 2 before the sponsor. Second time on Division 2. Second time on Division 2. Representative Harrelson, you're probably just a little bit too late. So second time, I'm going to go with Representative Conley first and then Chairman Olson. Madam Minority Floor Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And to respond to the question from the good Vice Chair of Minerals regarding reporting, honestly, it can be as simple as an oral report or one page that simply answers the directive of how has this new program been working, and specifically on the use of the peer specialists before the Judiciary Committee. And it just puts on their radar that there will be that expectation that they do so. So no additional cost to it. And as an it would be an administrative obligation is the way that I look at it. And again, we had a robust discussion yesterday about this new program, wanting to understand about how it is kind of changing our boot camp system. And it makes sense that we understand that a bit better as we move forward. We spend a tremendous amount of money in the Department of Corrections on public safety. We want to do it as well as possible. And this is one step to making it better. So let's hear about it. So I'm in favor of having a report of this division.
Thank you, Madam Minority Floor Leader. So members, we're on Division 2. Anyone else for their second time? Second time before the divider? Second time before the divider. I'm just going to scroll screens because I know some folks aren't having luck raising their hands, their yellow hands. To the divider, Representative Zwanitzer, Chairman Zwanitzer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I appreciate the comments, but I also appreciate that we continue to cut budgets and ask for more bureaucracy and more reports. And so this isn't a yearly report. I look at it, this program starts July 1st. It's going to take 2 months to train these peer specialists to be peer specialists. So that gets done by maybe October 1st. They become peer specialists, and they're going to somehow turn the youthful offender transition program around in 6 weeks by mid-November, so the department can write up a full report to give to us December 1st. I don't even believe the Judiciary Committee is scheduled to meet in December because LSO is encouraging us to have all of our meetings done before December 1st. So I'm not sure what information is forthcoming. The program's not going to kick off for 5 more months. It's no way going to be at a place that we can have any kind of valid data by December 1st, nor are we supposed to meet after December 1st. So I don't know why we're doing it, but if you would like the department to do more work with less money, I suppose that's a policy decision for the body, but I'd ask you to vote no.
So members, we're voting on Division 2 to House Bill 34, Standing Committee, second reading amendment number 1. All those in favor of the division, adopting the division, please raise your hand. In favor of the division. Thank you. All those opposed. The division has failed. We're back on Division 1. Representative Zwanitzer, Chairman Zwanitzer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think Division 1 is great, but I would do a technical amendment to remove, I don't know if I need to further divide it, but take out lines 1 and 2. So the division would just be lines 4 through 7, but it's a good amendment.
Thank you. Chief Clerk, would that be in order? I believe it would be.
I believe it would be.
Okay, so members, we're voting on this Division 1, or we're giving testimony on Division 1, which is lines 4 through 7 of second reading amendment number 1. Thank you very much. Chairman Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a question. On Labor Committee, we've heard about peer specialists and that sort of thing. So in the discussion on the bill originally, we heard about peer specialists, maybe counseling with education. Certainly in the substance abuse field, they use peer specialists to kind of help talk to folks about the issues that are involved in substance abuse. I could see there being sort of group activities. If I could just understand a little bit better from what is visualized in the prison environment with this, because suppose you have 8 prisoners and the peer specialist in a room, I assume, would there be a guard? I mean, I need to understand a little bit better what the vision of, I mean, if a peer specialist is in a room with 8 people and there's a guard, is that Is that sufficient that the peer specialist is not directly supervising? Are we trying to avoid having this peer specialist be alone with them? Or I just need some to understand that better. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Wilson. Any member for their first time on Division 1 as corrected? Division 1 is corrected. Representative Chairman Olson.
Sure, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I guess I'll try to answer that question for the good Chairwoman of Labor and Health. I don't know the answer perfectly. I think that we've rested that discretion with the department to figure out exactly what that means. At the end of the day, the intent of the amendment is to take away the opportunity for an abuse of the position to occur from the peer specialist position, that they would have that they would have some type of authoritative role over another inmate rather than an assisting role. And again, I gave a list of some of the things that these peer specialists might do. Help with coursework, help with, a person may be pursuing their GED or pursuing college courses or whatever it may be. And so this individual is likely going to sit down and work through a worksheet with them, or be on if they have access to a computer, they'll be on a computer with them. All of the fundamentals in terms of the presence of correction officers, that's all going to be whatever it already is in place. I don't, whether there's a particular scenario where the department may find that it is acceptable for the inmate to be in one room alone with the peer specialist, I can't answer that. I don't know all of their safety protocols. But I think ultimately, at the end of the day, again, the purpose here is really just to take away the peer specialists themselves usurping authority and saying, I have authority over you, so do X, Y, Z. I think it's more of that respect, and then we'll leave it to the department to maintain safety and really define what that means within the spirit. I think is at least where we're at. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Vice Chairman Larson, for your first time. Lloyd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman. And I guess I too have wondered, and the good chairman from Judiciary, I think, explained that a little bit, but I think the use of peer specialists has proven to be very effective. We use it in this body quite a bit. And if it, I think that we reach out to new legislators, especially the long-term legislators, try to reach out and be somewhat of a peer specialist and help new people better understand what they can do better and how to avoid pitfalls there. I don't know. I think it has some history of success, as the good chairman from Labor and Health pointed out, in those fields as well. So with that in mind, I'm trying to understand if the Department of Corrections has in place the ability to review and determine who these peer specialists are, why we would not want that to be. So a little more information there to help me understand where the real fear is would be appreciated.
Thank you very much. Any other members for the first time? Representative Crago, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition to the amendment for several reasons. First of all, I am unsure what we are defining direct supervision as, and I have fears after hearing testimony within committee that may interfere with the department's ability to effectuate the plan that they're trying to carry out, which includes cost savings and the transition of facilities from one place to another. And quite honestly, I'm afraid we're going to hamstring the department in trying to do what they're doing. And if we look at the bill itself, it already provides that peer specialists have to be under the direction of program staff. If we go up to lines 10 and 11 in the bill itself, it already talks about that, and that's added language. And so for that reason, I would ask that we do not approve the amendment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. So members, we're on Division 1, second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 34. House Bill 34. Any other member for their first time? Any other member for their first time? Representative Conley, and then Representative Provenza, and then Representative Haroldson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and in favor of this division of the amendment, and actually it gets to exactly what is being talked about right now. We heard an overview of what the DOC would like to do in terms of peer specialists and how they would work. But there's a very big difference between us and being in prison. Now, I know that we might joke around about that right now, but there is a very big difference. And that we want to make sure that with this new addition, that in fact, that one set of inmates does not have control or supervision over another set of inmates. It has happened honestly elsewhere in other states. And so let's just make sure that that doesn't happen here, that the idea behind the peer specialist is good and fine. But again, you have inmates in prison, and we do not want to get into the situation where some inmates are acting or have the potential to act closer to prison guards. It's as simple as that. And that this clause assures that, certainly our intention is that that doesn't happen. So on and in favor of this division.
Thank you. Representative Provenza, for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to reserve my right to speak on the second reading.
Thank you. Representative Haroldson, for your first time.
First for a second, Speaker.
Thank you. Any other members wish to speak for the first time on division number 1? Any other members first time division number 1?
Representative Sherwood.
I apologize. Representative Sherwood, please proceed. Thank you,
Mr. Chairman,
Chief Clerk.
thank you. I am speaking in favor of this division. Anytime there is an imbalance of power, there is room for abuse. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chief Clerk, for pointing that out. Any other member for their first time? Any other member for their first time? Members for their second time? Any member that spoke on their first time would like to speak a second time? Members for a second time? Representative Haroldson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I do believe that as much as, I mean, we need to be careful that we don't have an overstep of boundary. But I do believe there is a point to where we can actually see growth and development in people's lives whenever they've been able to find development in their life and freedom in their life, and then be able to walk and help other people through that. So obviously, if we were to do this situation for like a boot camp program, it wouldn't work well. But if it was simply helping them with working on computers or getting GEDs or stuff of that nature, I think that's good. So should we make sure that there isn't a conflict? Absolutely. But I also think we need to be careful that we don't eliminate the good of this program. By saying this, I believe that the judicial system will protect this from being an overstep, or I feel that it is. So I stand opposed to this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other member for their second time on division number 1? Second time division. Chairman Olson.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yeah, I won't belabor it because at the end of the day, obviously the bill is more important than the amendment to me. But I joined on this amendment with the good minority floor leader because, as we had our original discussion, we spent some time on this bill on this exact subject. And so I think that that's important that we try to fix an issue that a good percentage of this body raised with the concept of peer specialists. To me, that means the success of the bill. So that's important. I also do want to calm some of the concerns of some of the members because this amendment wasn't made in a vacuum. when the amendment was presented to me, I discussed it with the director and specifically asked, will this impact your vision of the program? And the answer is no. I would encourage members that if you have that concern and I'm not like I have a unique lifeline, maybe this is kind of just me being a peer specialist to some of my colleagues. You all have that same access. If you have a concern like that, I would encourage you to reach out to the department, not just on this bill, but on anything that we do in the future, rather than us guess what it might do to a program. None of us want to do that. But whatever the bill is, whatever the issue is, if there's an executive agency, as it tends to usually be, that is going to have to carry something out, it's prudent to say, hey, how is this going to affect you? Which we did, and we did not receive any concern. Whether that means that you need to pass this amendment or not, I don't know. That's up to you, whether you feel that it's necessary or not. But I do want to calm the concerns that it would somehow hamstring or change this program. I think if that were true, we would have had some of that feedback from the good director, and we did not. I also want to point out that if it did hamstring the program in any way, that would be the beauty of a report, would be that when they come back, we would learn and then be able to adjust as we go. I'm on and for the amendment, but ultimately I'm on and for this bill. So whatever's going to get this bill over the finish line, let's do that, body. With that, thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Any other member for their second time? Any other member for their second time? Any member for their second time? Representative Provenza.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just would like to, try to find the language, on and in favor of the amendment. In speaking with folks that have more direct research experience or expertise in this area, the thing that we found was that there's a lot of research in areas that are not currently in the incarceration system. And so I think there's a lot of warrant to the peer specialist program, and there's a lot of reason to use it and suggest it in this setting as well. But I do share some of the concerns that were discussed from the minority floor leader on this, in that when you have an issue of power in a prison system, it looks a lot different than it does everywhere else. So I'm asking for votes in favor of this amendment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Any other member for their second time? Anyone who spoke for the first time wishing to speak a second time? Anyone wish to speak a second time? Chairman Zwanitzer, the divider, do you want to bring us home, or are you good?
I'm good, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
All right. So members, we're voting on division number 1, to second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 34. All those in favor of division 1, please raise your hand. Thank you. All those opposed? Division number 1 has been adopted. House Bill 34, having been read 2 separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Members, there are certain limitations that are biologic, and we're going to stand at ease until 11:10. If you mute your microphones, stop your videos at 11:10, we'll continue. Stand at ease. So LSO, if you would get us our stream going live again, please.
You are live, Mr. Speaker.
I'm sorry, Jonathan, are we live? Yes, we are. Thank you. So thank you, members. Just a little update. There have been 100 people observing our proceedings this morning. So, and we've almost spoken that many times too. So we're right on par. So well done. Next bill for our consideration on second reading is House Bill 42.
Mr. Chairman.
House Bill 42, sponsored by Blockchain Financial Technology and Digital Innovation Technology, Chancery Court Vacancy Amendments, an act relating to courts.
Thank you. There is an amendment. Representative Walters.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I would move second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 42 and ask for your favorable consideration. And members, all this amendment does is change that date extension from 2026 to 2023. And the reason I'm proposing to do this is the Chancery Court is a priority of the legislature that has been worked on over the implemented a few years ago and then worked on since. And just wanted to make sure that it remains a priority to the judiciary. By moving it out to 2026, I fear that some of that focus may be lost. Secondly, I chose 2023 because that's the next general session of the Wyoming legislature. And so if there is a need to extend it again, it would not require a 2/3 vote to introduce the bill. And so it would be a simpler process to make that extension happen. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I would accept any questions.
Thank you very much, Representative Walters. Anybody wish to, for a first time, speak on second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 42? Any member for their first time? Representative Gray, for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to encourage a no vote on this. Just a little bit of background. So 2 years ago, this bill was considered in the 2019 general session to create this Chancery Court. And at the time, it was said that this was going to be revenue neutral, that the fee was going to pay for it. It was a very interesting provision where we actually set a minimum fee and allowed the judiciary to set any fee they wanted with a minimum fee there. And then 3 months later on the Judiciary Committee, we get a report that we're looking at a $1.1 million draw from the general fund to make this work. And frankly, I still don't understand how you can even have an aggregate budget for this for its $1.1 million, let alone a $1.1 million draw, a deficit to draw to the general fund. And I've asked, I still don't understand. I mean, you have a judge, you have a clerk, maybe 1 or 2 more staff. I don't even understand how the aggregate budget could be 1.1 million. And yet we get this 1.1 million report that it's going to be a 1.1 million draw from the general fund in this period. I think the judiciary responded to this by saying that the district court caucus the district court judges can spread this work around. That was a really good, encouraging sign, and I appreciate the judiciary doing that. And I think we should set this back for a while. We've also got this situation in Casper where funds are being used for this build out. I think we're going to have that conversation on the CapCon bill rather than here. I was going to draft them out. I don't think it's appropriate for here. Let's do it on the CapCon bill. But so we got this issue too of this build out in Casper, which is to me an odd situation. I don't think it's appropriate to move this forward any further than the original 2026. So I'd urge a no vote. Thank you.
Sorry, members. hit mute. I have Representative Duncan, then Henderson, then Sweeney. Representative Duncan, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a question to the bringers of the bill and as well as maybe some of the people with the amendment. My question is that appropriation amount out of the general fund, is that to set up a streamline and digitize the court? Because I remember when this Chancery Court was originally being brought, there was a lot of the potential for updates and things like that for the judiciary system to be more move at the speed of business. And so my question is that part of this appropriation or not?
So members, just to be clear, so we need to stay on the amendment. And I know this amendment, because of it's a timeline issue. We're trying to understand the consequences of that timeline, appropriations, et cetera. But let's try to stay on the amendment and the effect of the amendment in that. So I'm not saying that wasn't germane, but we're starting to get a little bit off in the weeds. So next one up is Representative Henderson on the amendment, and then Sweeney, and then Yen, and then Nicholas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm on in favor of this amendment. I think it's a good, all things considered, I think this is a good common sense amendment. And so I would encourage favorable support. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Sweeney, for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I too believe I'm speaking in favor of the amendment. I think I would have to agree with the representative that just spoke. It's a good common sense way to handle this, and it gives us adequate time to take a look what's going on and if things are working. So I appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I have Representative Yen, Nicholas, and then Representative Kinner. Representative Yen, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So the Chancery Court is a new court, and if we appoint judges, we'll have to pay them, and we'll have to hire a full-time staff member essentially to manage their court cases. And not only that, we'll have to have a place for them to handle their court cases. The court system, I believe, is going to make accommodations for much of that, like with the spaces. But essentially, if we hold off on holding the appointment date, we can roll out the Chancery Court system in a little bit of a more structured fashion, in a way that doesn't put as much of a burden on our budget as it would if we appointed them immediately or even in just the next 2 years. So I would urge you to vote against this amendment. I don't think it's necessary to do this when the district court judges say that they can handle the initial caseload, because the initial caseload is going to be small. From the testimony I heard on both the Blockchain Select Committee as well as the Joint Judiciary Committee. And so I don't think it's necessary to appoint it sooner. And I think it actually puts more of a strain on our budget when we need to be looking at what can we push back a little further for the next couple of years, because we're in such of a fiscal crisis that we are in now. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Chairman Nicholas, then Representative Kinner, and then Representative Nyman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And with the Speaker's indulgence, first of all, let's look at where this amendment came from. This came out of the Blockchain Committee, which really has nothing to do with the court systems or anything. And so why is this amendment here? And what's the purpose of this amendment? The purpose of this amendment is to delay funding of the Chancery Court. And the purpose of that is basically a strategic move to postpone funding the Chancery Court, and then in hopes that perhaps maybe it doesn't even exist, or it never comes to fruition. So it's really kind of a backdoor mechanism to address that issue. And I would submit that the bill itself is the backdoor to do that. And this amendment is basically trying to take control of that and say, wait a minute, this is a legislative that should go through probably the Judiciary Committee, the Appropriations Committee, but certainly not the Blockchain Committee. And if we want to unfund the Chancery Court, we don't do it by delays of financing. And so this basically puts it back on course and makes us, if we want to evaluate the whether or not we want a Chancery Court and fund it, this is not the avenue to do it. And this bill was not the avenue to do it. So this amendment basically takes us back to probably to where we should be. And I just want to correct a little bit of the information that from my recollection, and that is that we always knew that this would never be self-funded. That was never a representation that I was aware of. This is the same amount of money we pay basically any district court. So we have district courts across the state, and every one of them have a budget of roughly $1.1 million per biennium, and that represents 3 employees. This one was slightly higher because we anticipated that they may need 1 extra employee when this court is up and running. I don't want to go into the reasons why we have and we passed the Chancery courts, but they were significant and in its current law. And in current law, we need to move forward with funding it, or we need to reevaluate the Chancery Court fully, but not through just by extending out when we're going to appoint those judges. But just in a nutshell, the Chancery Court was a business opportunity that the legislature decided to do to promote business in Wyoming, and particularly out-of-state companies to do business here, to make fast, expeditious work of business issues that end up in district court. We're currently building the Casper office, we're funding the Casper office, and we're building a courtroom in the Casper office for the Chancery Court. So all those things are tied into this process. And so I would respectfully suggest that you pass this amendment. If indeed the bringer of the blockchain or whomever wants to go after the funding of the Chancery Court or the location, so be it. I would just say that the bill is not the vehicle to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. So members, we're on second reading number 1 to House Bill 42. And I know we're getting a lot of background information to help inform us, because a bill that just has a strike and an insert, and then an amendment that has a different strike and insert, we got to get some context around it. So I'm giving quite a bit of latitude, I would argue, with this. So next I have Representative Kinner, Nyman, and then Olson, Chairman Olson. So next, Representative Kinner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members of the 66th, on and for this amendment, I like the idea of shortening the time frame within which we can take a closer look and make sure that it's working as we thought it would, and so on. So I like the oversight part of that, and would certainly encourage your aye vote on this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Nyman, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yeah, as I listened to the testimony yesterday in regards to the Chancery Court, trying to bring myself up to speed on some of the aspects of it, I got on the horn and I got a hold of my county clerk and had a good visit with her in regards to the necessity of this. And while she gave me some pretty good insights, I think, in kind of the caseload and everything like that, the kind of determination I come up with, and I'm sure I've not been in on all the information, and I appreciate the good representative from Center of the State's information in regards to what they've created and started. But the attitude that has kind of been relayed to me, that this is a problem, or excuse me, a solution in search of a problem, because what she rendered to me was that they are more than able to handle what's going on right now. So I'm not saying that this shouldn't happen, but I would be much more inclined to push this back and see if the amount of legal problems come up to fulfill the need for this. And I think we need some time and a perspective to be able to see what is really going to happen with this. I don't think it's going to hurt anything, in my opinion, to push this back a little bit and give a little bit more time to see how things develop and the need for this. And so that was what was relayed to me by the boots on the ground, is that we're doing fine. Give us a chance to see what develops, and if this develops, and if this need is truly there. And so I stand opposed to this amendment. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Chairman Olson, for your first time.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and in favor of the amendment, in explaining why I'm in favor of that amendment, I think because so much history is now being dumped on the 66 legislature, I think it's important to, when you're making your decision on what is the magic number in terms of the delay, which is where we're at with the bill. I think it's important to understand the context of that. So this bill is now coming to you from the Judiciary Committee, which makes sense because it goes to courts. Prior to that, its evolution comes from the Blockchain Committee, which also makes a lot of sense for a couple of reasons. One, the good speaker pro tem is actually on that committee, and the good speaker pro tem is actually also on the committee with the judicial branch that was tasked with setting up the Chancery Court. So just so the members understand why the bill found its way into the Blockchain Committee, that's one of the reasons. The other reason why is because it is actually tied with blockchain very tightly. It's the genesis of why the Chancery Court idea came to fruition in the state of Wyoming, was to attract not just business, but tech business as well. In fact, what might be of interest to some folks is that the Supreme Court is looking to staff not this court with just any clerk or any staff attorney, if you will, that our other courts have, but is actually looking to someone with a background in blockchain and technology that'd be very similar to what you would see in the state of Delaware. So I thought that'd be helpful for some folks to understand, just because it seems like there may be a misconception that there's something nefarious about how the bill came to you, and there's certainly not. It's just a process, and bills go where they go sometimes. But at the end of the day, as the chairman of both of those committees, I will say I'm very much in favor and in support of the Chancery Court. The magic dates, I don't know that there is one. It's just one budget or two budgets. You decide how many budgets you want to delay it by. Ultimately, I support this amendment, which I discussed with the bringer of it, because I think one budget does let you take a really good hard look at it. So I think that's right. If you reject it and you want two budgets to look at it, I don't think that that's the end of the world. The Chancery Court is going to go forward under the judicial conference of the district courts. So I don't, whether you vote for this amendment or not, or it's not going to change the Chancery Court getting off and running. All the rules are already in place by the Supreme Court. The process is in place, and they have already started the application process for that one clerk I spoke about. So, I mean, it's off and running. So maybe just understanding what the amendment really does is it just changes where our funding goes into that picture. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much. Representative Stiff, I'd had your hand up for a bit. Have you declining to testify?
Oh, Mr. Speaker, I just speak in support of the amendment.
All right, thank you very much. I have Representative McGuire and then Representative Ottman. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Rising in favor of the amendment. I think the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. Right now, if we want the Chancery Court to work, if we want to attract new businesses to the state of Wyoming, we need to do something different. If you go to the other states in the nation, they look at Wyoming as being, frankly, not a very business-friendly place to be. Otherwise, with no income tax on corporations and all of the other tax breaks that we have, the state would be overrun with businesses. We need to do something different. If we expect the economy to diversify, if we expect companies to come to the state of Wyoming to invest and do business, then we have to accommodate them, and we have to make changes, and we have to do things differently. In favor of the amendment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative McGuire. Representative Ottman, and then Representative Worf.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would just like to say I'm against this amendment. One is the timing. I realize that with a subcommittee that has been created and is moving very quickly, and it's bringing so many diverse things together, it's amazing that this is one more step that needs to be done. But right now, in the state of our state, and with everything lockdown and with a money situation, to rush through bringing in another court for over $1 million just doesn't seem to me to be feasible. I know that the other pieces of this puzzle want this to go forward so that it can be done in due diligence, and I appreciate that. But personally, I'm going to vote no on this. Thank you.
Representative Wharf, for your first time.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, I guess I didn't bring this up yesterday because I didn't want to show my ignorance, and I'm trying to decide whether I want to show my ignorance or not. The question I had when I first saw this bill was that we're actually doing something, putting something in legislation that some of us may not even be here when that comes active. And I guess that was the question I had, was how appropriate was that for this body, the 66, to be passing something that it becomes effective in 2021, but it doesn't actually begin until March of 2026. And I guess that's still a question I have, Mr. Speaker, so maybe somebody can answer that. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Wharf. That is actually quite common, I would suggest. But somebody else can maybe address it. I have Representative Jennings for your first time. Anyone else for their first time after Representative Jennings?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I was sitting on Judiciary at this time about 3 or 4 years ago, and I would say that when this was brought to us, it was not brought, and I'm not necessarily against the Chancery Court. In fact, I probably stand in support of that, but it was brought to us that it was going to be very low cost. And so that has continued to shift and change. And as that's changed, that has made my support for that begin to wane a little bit. And so I'd be in opposition to this. Let's kick this out. Let's watch this a little further. We're not in a great budget place right now. So it's probably not going to harm us to give the district courts, they say they can handle it. Let's give them a little bit of time. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Representative Jennings. Representative Martinez, and then Representative Larson Lloyd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Romero Martinez, I stand on and for this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chairman Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Likewise, I stand in support of this amendment.
Thank you. Chairman Greer. Chairman Greer, would you turn on?
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir. Please.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. I'm still having technology problems. I'm going to support this amendment, and for a lot of the reasons that were said, and that was to keep this initiative driving forward. And a lot of comments, I'm going to say most of the comments that have made have all been true to a certain degree. Having been deeply involved in this, the first hurdle was to get the judiciary on board. The district court clerks were adamantly opposed to this. And a lot of this just kind of dealt with people protecting their own turf, their own fiefdoms. And it's taken a lot of discussions to get people to look at the greater good for the state of Wyoming. And that greater good is, how do we make this a more business-friendly state? The Chancery Court's main objective is to allow business disputes to be resolved quickly and to lower the costs of litigation and allow business to operate, as we say, at the speed of business. So as this has progressed through this, the budget amounts, I don't disagree. Those came in much, much higher than what was initially thought. Moving this date out does help us deal with that to a certain degree. So having a little more time allows that budget to adjust, and as we've said, allows this court to stand up. When you read through the initial legislation, we were talking about a temporary panel of judges and retired judges with expertise in business law, trust law in particular. And this is how, I got to talk to a gentleman that ran this from the volunteer state. They did it as a beta test in a district of their capital district where they shifted workloads. And so this current short-term plan is very similar to that. What we're going to do is have a shifting of workloads while we implement the new rules, while we implement the new clerk system and how that is all going to work. But I am a bit concerned if we push it way out that we're not going to continue to use what we can do as a legislature, and that's our pressure to move this forward. So again, I'm going to repeat, initially, this was not liked by the third branch of the government. And it took a great deal to get them to buy in. And as soon as they started seeing the real benefits of this, they've been buying in. And now we're working our way forward. And so this modified date with this amendment, I think, is a very good approach. I think, as the bringer of the amendment said, if we run into a few more obstacles, we'll be in a general session and we can address it then. But let's not lose sight of the fact that if we make our state business friendly, okay, we attract business to this state, that what we're doing is keeping our eyes up and looking forward to make the state of Wyoming what we all know it can be, what it has been. So I vote in favor of the amendment.
Thank you. Chairman Harshman, for your first time.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and support for the amendment. I think, just we've been working on this now for the last several years. And if you push this out, I think 5 years, and you just go by kind of our turnover history, there'll probably be less than, 15 of us here that will even remember this debate. And I think, so you look around, odds are there'll be about 10 to 15 of us in 2026 that'll even know this happened. And I think I think Wyoming is so unique, and we're changing. We've got some of the wealthiest corporate partners who have Wyoming driver's license. And I think to continue this move of these corporations to Wyoming to make us the most business friendly state in the country. We have the tax system for it. That's great. But we need this piece. And I think putting us in a general session to look at it again next year, if we decide, hey, or putting us in a budget session next year ahead of this, we can say in the budget bill, we can say, hey, we're going to move it back another year if we need to. And we can deal with it then. But so I appreciate the sponsor of the amendment, and I'd urge your support. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Chairman Harshman. Any other member for their first time? Is there anyone that hasn't spoken for their first time? Any other member for their first time?
Yeah, Representative O'Hearn, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Representative O'Hearn, please proceed.
I rise in favor of this bill. We've talked about kicking the can down the road. You got to see the can to know what your options are. So I'm in favor, and I support this bill, or this amendment.
Thank you, Representative O'Hearn. Any other member for their first time? Any other member for their first time? Seeing none, any member for their second time?
Mr. Speaker. I guess you went, Mr. Speaker, there was somebody with their hand up, but you went by it, I guess. So.
I apologize if I missed somebody. Representative Gray, for your second time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I voted for the Chancery Court in 2019. That's why I remember the conversation so much on it. People have come up to me at times and said, I kind of lean towards voting no, and I do. And I've tried to work on that. Think about really studying these issues and seeing whether it would be an advancement forward on the state. And that's why I remember the conversations around this. And I had conversations with a lot of people about it, that we were going to, one, rent a courtroom, and the fee was going to basically cover the whole thing. And that's why we were setting a minimum fee, so that the judiciary could set it. And I agree that this is a great concept to get quick adjudication of these issues. It's an economic development issue. So then we turn around 3 months later in the Judiciary Committee, and we get this report that's going to be a $1.1 million draw from the general fund in a period of budget difficulties. And it became concerning to me. And I'm not saying we should abandon it, but I think we can do this in an efficient manner. And that's basically what the district court conference has agreed to do by splitting up this workload on their own. You know, this issue of the Judiciary Committee, what committee it's coming out of, we wanted to handle this in Judiciary. We heard the testimony every single time. Then in the last meeting, it was said that blockchain had it handled. The representative, good chairman of Minerals, who I have a lot of respect for, worked with on a lot of things, was the liaison. He's on that committee. So we said, okay, they're going to handle this. And they said they had a solution to try to get this to where it's not going to be a huge budget draw. And I think this bill kind of moves us, without the amendment, moves us in that direction by saying that we're going to give enough time to see what the workload's going to be and have the district court conference handle this, which in the testimony, I don't want to speak for them, is I think what they want to do. They want to spread this workload. You know, we had the utilization chart, all the district court judges, they want to spread this workload amongst their district court judges and those that have this expertise. So, you know, the chairman of appropriations, you know, I had these conversations, I remember them. I feel like it's yesterday. And I was proud I could support that in 2019. And since then, I wanted to work on trying to fix this because I'm concerned where it's going. The businesses, they don't need a gold-plated courtroom. They want the issues handled, okay? And we don't need to have this huge construction project and this huge budget. And they're willing to pay a premium to get them handled because they're saving a lot of money to get this done quickly. And that's why it's a good concept. But the direction it went immediately, I don't think is appropriate. And one other note here, you know, you think about the judiciary budget, and a lot of respect for the judiciary, I do. It's a fascinating experience being on the Judiciary Committee. It's I believe the lowest reduction in our general fund is 4% in the judiciary, because in statute, you know, it's basically personnel costs that are set in statute. And so on top of that, it's the lowest agency reduction. There's reasons for that. On top of that, now to put this new load on that budget, which is the Chancery Court, I don't want to speak for anyone, but hearing that testimony in Judiciary, I don't think it was something they were even thrilled about. And I think that's why they said, look, we're going to spread this workload around. We're going to try to be part of the solution here on these budget difficulties, because the salary is basically set in statute. That budget is pretty much on autopilot. So I just think that setting it to 2026 the way it was is appropriate. We talked about these things in Judiciary. Let's keep it the way it was. Let's vote no on the amendment and move forward with the Chancery Court that is split up amongst the current district court conference, so we get adjudication of these business issues and we see what the workload is. This isn't going to be created overnight. As the representative from Rock Springs said earlier, this has got to start being written into contracts that you're going to adjudicate disputes through this court. That's going to take a lot of time to start getting that into contracts. 5 years is appropriate to see what the caseload is, and we can move it up. But I think the original 2026 deadline is where to go. And so I'd urge no on the amendment. And I still do support the concept of the Chancery Court. I do. But I want it to be done in a way that is efficient for our state and serves the purpose best for our state. So I'd urge a no vote on.
Thank you very much. Representative Yen for your second time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So this the specific date in the bill that the amendment is amending was one that was brought to us by the court system while working on their budget. And like the previous speaker said, it went through the committee process. There was nothing nefarious about it being assigned to blockchain. If anything, blockchain is probably more supportive of the Chancery Court than even the Judiciary Committee. I don't want to speak for this session's Judiciary Committee, but for sure, this is one supported by every single member of the Blockchain Committee, except for the possibility of me But if you're saying that I had the nefarious power to get this amendment, this bill all the way through 2 different committees, then I will take the compliment that I am that powerful in this legislature. So other than that, I would ask you to vote no on this amendment. I think the further date is the right thing to do, and it's one that will get our third branch of government on board to see where we're going, and we can see how it goes on its way. And if for some reason we want to change that date again, we're more than welcome to do that. But I think it makes sense with our current budget to leave it the way it is in the bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much, Representative Yin. Any other member for their second time? Any member for their second time? I have Representative Nyman for your second time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to reiterate, I appreciate all the testimony and all the discussion back and forth here, but I don't think anybody here is trying to necessarily do away with Chancery Court. I do think we have to be realistic about what we're facing, and that's been reiterated. I'm not going to beat a dead horse. I have an opinion. I'm going to make a practice of it. But I think it's necessary that we recognize that we are in a situation right now. We're struggling every day to try to figure out where the money's going to come from. Nobody wants to get rid of the Chancery Court, in my opinion, and based on what I'm hearing. They just want to say we need some time to see how things develop, recognizing that we are in a financial situation, but we've also got a group of judiciary assistant, our clerks and our judges that are working very diligently to try to handle the caseload right now. And as that caseload develops, this timing will allow us to see what happens and let us make a better, more well-founded decision on the necessity and the size and the scope of what we're looking at here. So I stand against the amendment and appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, Representative Nyman. Representative Nyman, you might want to just check your mic. You kind of had a bit of a muffling with it, so I'm not suggesting there's anything wrong, but the next time maybe just do a sound check for me right now. I'll give you the privilege to do a sound check.
Yes, sir. Does it sound all right?
It's still pretty kind of off in the distance. So thank you. We'll work on that. Any other member for their first time or second time, excuse me. Any other member for their second time? Representative Martinez for your second time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to recap what I heard, and it sounds to me like this has been in the queue or discussion queue for quite some time, and maybe it wasn't accepted at first by the district courts, but they seem to be on board with it. It's definitely going to be something that's needed. If we need to figure out a way to innovate to get the funding for it in the future, maybe it doesn't need to be a gold-plated room or whatever, but it's something that needs to happen. And it looks like it's appropriate for its committee. I mean, these are realities. Blockchain is not Bitcoin. I'm not a genius, but I worked in communications and computer systems for an outfit within our city that defends our nation. And the world is changing. And it looks like we're already where we need to be. And when you have big companies like the big silver shiny thing that's also helping defend our nation in our state, we really do have some cybersecurity needs that are going in today as we speak. And if there's an issue against any of these big box corporations and big data, etc., we need that apparatus tomorrow. Actually, we needed it yesterday because they've been here already for a while. And I wanted to really address this issue from a legal perspective, even from within the committee, but I had some other priorities when given the opportunity. So I have some big opinions on what needs to happen in judiciary. And it starts with acknowledging that Wyoming is going to be, if it already is, a very important part to our nation. And so I just want to continue to say that I do stand for this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, members. On the amendment, the date change on the amendment, continuing with Representative Ottman. And then anybody else who would like to speak, please raise your hand. Representative Ottman.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just to reiterate, as a Wyoming citizen, I'm very excited about the potential of new business and bringing the economy back. But what I hear too is there's a balance. At the present time, a lot of the mindset is that we bring in a lot of new businesses that requires more services. Maybe that's not a good thing. So along with that, it seems to me, and somebody may correct me, that within the last year, that one of the things that we were going to look at was updating all of the judiciary's computer systems and things like that, because with the technological advances and with the things that they needed and trying to network around the state, that they weren't currently able to do that. And it was going to be quite a budgetary thing. So what I'm thinking is, just by going forward with what the subcommittee people are doing to bring in the reason for that chancery court, I think it would be a good idea, rather than starting another one that would have to be updated or maybe get some things that would have to be updated soon. It would just be a good idea to proceed what we can and just to wait. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other member for their second time? Second time before the sponsor. I'm scrolling the screen. Second time before the sponsor. Representative Walters.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think this amendment took a few side turns. And the first one I'd like to address is, you can check the fiscal note. There is no funding tied to this bill. There's no funding tied to this date change. And so that is the first detour it went on that I think was mistaken. And so this date change simply keeps the focus on the Chancery Court and the potential of this Chancery Court. That's why we have the date change. The date was chosen because it can be extended in the next general session without having the requirement of a 2/3 vote to bring the bill forward. And so that was the reason for choosing 2023 versus 24, which would have really been a split the difference. Keeping the focus on implementing the Chancery Court is really the goal here. The Chancery Court will go forward with or without the 2023 or 2026. It's a matter of the ability to hire judges and create it in its own entity, you might say, outside of the district courts doing the work. That's really what this date is referring to. It allows for some time to see how the caseload is looking, and still doesn't prevent them from continuing to move it forward as the caseload sees fit. And again, the Wyoming legislature can change this very easily in the next general session. So I would encourage an aye vote. Certainly appreciate your support, and thank you for the time.
Thank you very much. So members, we're voting on second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 42. All those in favor of the amendment, please raise your hand. Thank you. All those opposed? Chief Clerk, this is going to be a difficult one to call on the hand raise. Would you please call the roll on second reading amendment number 1 to House Bill 42?
Andrew?
Aye.
Baker?
No.
Banks?
No.
Bear?
No.
Blackburn?
No.
Brown?
Aye.
Burkhart?
Aye.
Burt?
No.
Clausen?
Aye.
Clifford?
No.
Connolly?
No.
Crago?
No.
Duncan?
Representative Duncan?
Sorry, no.
Eklund?
Aye.
Air?
Aye.
Flitner?
Aye.
Fortner?
No.
Gray?
No.
Greer?
Aye.
Hallinan?
No.
Haroldson?
No.
Harshman?
Aye.
Heiner?
No.
Henderson,
Aye.
Hunt,
Aye.
Jennings,
No.
Kenner,
Aye.
Knapp,
No.
Larson Lloyd,
Aye.
Larson Dan,
No.
McGuire,
Aye.
Martinez,
Aye.
Nyman,
No.
Newsom,
Aye.
Nicholas,
Aye.
Oakley,
Aye.
Obermuller,
Aye.
O'Hearn,
Aye.
Olson,
Aye.
Ottman,
No.
Paxton,
Aye.
Provenza,
No.
Roscoe,
Aye.
Schwartz,
Aye.
Sherwood,
No.
Simpson,
Aye.
Summers,
Aye.
Stith,
Aye.
Stivar,
No.
Sweeney,
Aye.
Walters,
Aye.
Washit,
No.
Western,
Aye.
Wharf,
No.
Williams,
No.
Wilson,
Aye.
Winter,
No.
Yin,
No.
Zawanitzer.
No.
Mr. Speaker,
Aye.
closing vote. Are there any changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. 32 aye, 28 no.
Thank you. Second reading of number one. Second reading of number one to House Bill 42 has been adopted. House Bill 42, having been read two separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection is so ordered. Next bill for consideration on second reading is House Bill 44.
House Bill 44, sponsored by Select Water. Omnibus Water Bill Construction, an act relating to water development projects.
Just to confirm, Chief Clerk, I see no amendments.
No, sir.
Thank you. House Bill 44, having read two separate times, the question is, shall the bill be read a third time? Hearing no objection, it is so ordered. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I move that the House stand in recess until 2 p.m.
Mr. Majority Floor Leader,
Oh, wrong
based
one,
on-
Mr. Speaker. No, that's the right one. Yeah.
Mr. Majority Floor, based on the number of bills before us and committee of the whole, do you want, is 2 p.m. the right time?
Mr. Speaker, we're not going to get through that whole committee of the whole
Okay.
list anyway. So
All right,
I
thank you
think,
very much.
2 p.m.
So members, any committee announcements? Committee announcements? For the body and for the members, the Rules Committee will be meeting upon adjournment today to consider House amendments to our rules. Any further announcements? You've heard the motion of the Majority Floor Leader. All those in favor of...
Mr. Speaker.
Oh, I'm sorry. Representative Wharf, I don't see you on my screen.
Yeah, Mr. Speaker, I had a question because I had sent in an amendment for the rules and I was told that that's due Friday.
I'll clarify that offline for you,
Okay,
Representative.
thank you. I needed to know because I had plans this afternoon or right now during lunch. So I need to know whether I need to be there or not, Mr. Speaker.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I'll contact you immediately, Representative Wharf. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other announcements or any other queries for the chair? All right. All those in
Mr.
favor,
Speaker,
Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker, Representative Oakley was waving her hand there. Nope, it was a mistake. Okay.
I think she's waving at somebody driving by. Any other announcements? All right. All those in favor of the Majority Floor Leader's motion to recess until 2 p.m., please raise your hand. All those opposed? Motion carries. The House is in recess until 2 p.m. Thank you. Please stop your video